It's a nerd, it's a lame, it's Mr.Clintastik, and I am here with a Magic the Gathering Arena Best of One deck tech I call Temur Ultimatum. Now, as the name suggests, the deck focuses on the Temur Ultimatum Genesis Ultimatum, which is a 7-drop, 2 green, 3 blue, 2 red sorcery spell. I know, right? Sounds nasty. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand. Exile Genesis Ultimatum. Now, permanents include lands, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, so anything like instants and sorceries, they're going to go to your hand instead of going to the battlefield, of course. But your lands, your permanents, they're all going to the battlefield. Now, I consider myself at the basic root a combo player. I like seeing things just work like a little mechanism, and Genesis Ultimatum, in my opinion, just screams combo piece. Like, Mr.Clintastik, please play me as a combo piece, and I have to. Like, why not? So, to do so, I had to put together a ramp package. Now, post bannings, we're missing Growth Spiral, but I don't think it's the biggest loss. It was great, of course, for decks like Wilderness Wreck, but Wilderness Wreck was oppressing decks potentially like this one here. So, getting back to it, how are we going to ramp and how are we going to combo? Well, let's start at the bottom. Here we have Arboreal Grazer, a 1-drop beast, a 0/3 with reach. When Arboreal Grazer ETBs or enters the battlefield, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tap. So it's just a great 1-drop, especially at turn 1, to help you get to your 3 drops. You see, we don't even have any 2 drops. We're not using things like Paradise Druid. We no longer have Growth Spiral. I'm not a big fan of the Goose for this deck in particular because I like the lands entering the battlefield instead of having a token that I may lose later, or I might lose my Goose and a token just becomes 3 life. So I really like Grazer. Right now, my 1-drop slot. Next, we have Cultivate, and if you're trying to ramp right now, Cultivate is a must-have. It's a 3-drop sorcery card in green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. Everything about this is amazing. Everything. We have lands that scry. We might scry something to the bottom early that we might want later. So the ability to shuffle is pretty excellent, especially after we've thinned our deck of 2 lands, which is great in itself. The fact that it puts 1 onto the board and 1 into your hand, it's just super powerful for what we're trying to do in our ramp strategy. Excellent card, excellent design in my opinion. Next, we have Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Everybody knows Uro. It's everyone's favorite Elder Giant. Blue-green, colorless. When Uro ETBs, sacrifice it unless it escaped, which is fine, because when the ETBs or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card, and you may put a land from your hand to the battlefield. So it's not the fact that it's not only when it enters the battlefield, but also when it attacks. Silly. Uro has gotten us out of tons of situations, and I'm going to explain how Uro combos later. I'm sure you already know. I'm sure people that play Magic regularly already knows what we're trying to do. They can look at the deck and see the roadmap, and they're just like, oh, that's where he's going. But this is for people that really need to understand how the deck works, how it functions, so that they can, try to get some wins for themselves. So, anyways, going back to it. Uro escapes for 4, 2 green, 2 blue. You exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. I'm going to explain how we get those cards into the yard in a bit, but just remember, Uro's great. He puts a land onto the board, he draws you a card, he gains you life. He's great against aggro, he's great against control. He's great for the deck. So I'm running 4 of, but you can always tinker if you want. we have Storm's Wrath. I mean, post bannings, everyone's coming in with the mono decks, the mono color decks. You got mono white with your Healer Hawks going into your Johnny Pride mates, into your Heliod's. You got your mono green with your Pelt Collectors and your Barkhide Trolls and your Stone Cold Serpents. You got your, I can go on and on. You got your mono black. You got your mono, what am I missing? Blue. What else am I missing? Green, black, blue. Oh, and of course mono red. Of course mono red. So you definitely want to have your Storm's Wrath. And it hits Planeswalkers too, which is very relevant. I love Storm's Wrath. Going forward, we have Migratory Greathorn. Just another way to ramp. Now, he's not the greatest, but if you have your Arboreal Grazer out on turn 1 and you happen to have your third land on the board on turn 2, you can Migratory Greathorn, get another land onto the board, have a 3/4 attacker, a 3/4 blocker, which is not bad, and also ramp at the same time. I like it, but I do think it can be altered a bit, maybe the number of copies. Next, we have Cavalier of Thorns. Whew, excellent spell. Like Cultivate, in my opinion, if you're ramping, if you're trying to ramp, Cavalier of Thorns is excellent. Now, he's a 5-drop, 3 green, 2 generic elemental knight with reach. Reach is super significant. Arboreal Grazer has reach, and when he's mutated with Greathorn, he's a threat because he can then block significant flyers. And sometimes they don't even remember that Arboreal Grazer was mutated and he has reach, and they just swing it right into Greathorn. Same goes for Cavalier of Thorns. Sometimes people haven't even seen Cavalier of Thorns in months because, you know, Standard's been crazy. But having reach is very significant on a 5/6 body is really good. And then when he ETBs, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, you put a land onto the battlefield, which is excellent, and you put the rest into your graveyard. So earlier, I was like, how are we going to put our cards in the graveyard for Uro? Boom. Cavalier of Thorns fuels our graveyard. It can put an Uro in the yard for us to play, which can always be great. Well-rounded card. Also, when it dies, you can exile it, and when you do, put another target card from your graveyard on top of your library, which oftentimes can be Uro or Genesis Ultimatum to hit off the combo, and we're almost there. For those that's like, just get on with it. Just get on with it. We're almost there. Next, we have Beanstalk Giant. I'm going to get to the main piece in a second. But next, we have Beanstalk Giant, a 7-drop, 1 green, 6 generic giant. But it has an adventure for 3, Fertile Footsteps. Search your library for a basic land, put onto the battlefield, shuffle your library. Now, remember, this doesn't say tapped. This does not say tapped. So if you have an abundance of lands in your hand and you happen to get a green land with Fertile Footsteps and you have Grazer in hand, you can get even more value in that same turn, because unlike most of these other cards, like Greathorn, Cultivate, Grazer, this land comes in untapped, and Greathorn comes in tapped too. So it's very significant that you remember that Cavalier of Thorns allows the land to come in untapped, just in case you need that extra land for whatever's necessary. But once again, going back to Beanstalk Giant, let's see. Yeah, Beanstalk Giant and Cavalier of Thorns. I had to make sure I was saying that right. Beanstalk Giant and Cavalier of Thorns both allow the land to come in untapped, so that's very significant. And then Beanstalk Giant, power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. So oftentimes Beanstalk Giant can come in as often 7/7 because you need 7 mana to play them, or a 8/8, a 9/9, 8/10/10, and that goes back to our Terror of the Peaks. Terror of the Peaks is a 5-drop, 2 red, 3 generic dragon with flying. Of course, the dragon's going to have flying. Spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. Now, I love that because this could just be, it could just have the second ability here and it would still be good. But the fact that it's dealing damage to the opponent, if they don't have a board wipe, they have to target it directly is excellent. So What we're looking at here, though, is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. I'm going to say that again. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So that's your Uro, dealing damage for 6. That's your Greathorn, dealing damage for 3. That's your Cavalier of Thorns, dealing damage for 5. That's your Beanstalk Giant, dealing damage for 7 plus. That's your Terror of the Peaks, dealing damage for 5 if a second one comes out, and then start dealing double damage for all of these things if there's 2 Terror of the Peaks out. So, Genesis Ultimatum. You play it, you have Terror of the Peaks out, you get an Uro, you get a Terror of the Peaks, a Uro, a Cavalier of Thorns. You're dealing 11 damage to the dome, getting mana to the board, card advantage. Crazy. It can get really, really, really silly. You don't even always need Genesis Ultimatum to win with this deck. You can oftentimes win with Uro, you can win with Greathorn, you can win with Thorns. You can even win with Beanstalk Giant, you can win with Terror of the Peaks. But comboing off just feels so sweet. It just, oh my goodness, it just feels delicious. So there will be a link below with the gameplay. I ran this through a league, but I guess I'll run through the lands real quick. I'm pretty sure this has 26 lands. Yep, 26 lands, and you could probably tune it to your liking. You could probably add Castle Vantress to the land base, but it's running all the Triomes. You know, it's a 3-color deck. I want to have as many of the colors as I need. I went down to 1 Fabled Passage. It was just coming up a lot of times with my Grazer, and it kind of wasn't fitting where I needed it to fit. I'm running the Temple of Mystery for Scry, Breeding Pool, Stomping Grounds for the dual colors. Then I'm running a cascade of basic lands so that they can be tutored up with the multiple abilities in this deck. So I'm running 3 islands, 2 forests, 2 mountains and 4 forests. I think it's pretty standard mana base. But yeah, if you think you would enjoy this deck, like I said, I will have a link in the description below with this exact build. And you can see the gameplay in our standard league. So this has been Clintastik, and I will see you guys next time.